It is now 10:05, so we're going to get started. My name is Melinda Miles, and I am the coordinator of the IT Vet Coalition at Haiti Takes Root. And I want to welcome everybody to our first webinar today, which is about ecosystem-based adaptation and specifically some of the funding that is out there. I'd like to introduce the other folks that you can see on your screen, my colleagues Melissa Sano and Kenson Tews from ITVET, Haiti Takes Root. And we also have with us for the panel this morning, Mr. Jean Wiener from FOPO-BEAM. We can't see your video, Jean. I don't know if you have one, but are you able to speak? Can we hear you? Okay, so we have a little technical difficulties there. I can't hear or see Jean at the moment. We're going to get started with Kenson. He's going to do our introductory piece, and he will be sharing his screen. Just to let everybody know, we're also recording this webinar. If you have any questions at any point, you can type them into the chat or the Q&A box, which you should see on your screen. You can also raise your hand, and that will let us know that you're trying to get our attention. Okay, so I hope that nobody's having technical difficulties. And Jean, let's try to see how we can get you on here. Maybe you might have to log off and log back on. I'm not sure. You have no video or audio at the moment. All right, I am going to pass it now to Kenson, who is going to get us started and will be sharing his screen for us now. Thanks, Kenson.
Oh, hi everybody. Welcome to the webinar. It's one of the series of webinars that HTR will start having. We'll send you a proper schedule and agenda for a webinar series, but considering the fact that we are all living in this crisis right now, where we're all trying to adapt, well, we're going to talk about adaptation. We're all trying to adapt, and for us in the work that we do with our coalition members, we are switching gears into how we can connect with you on a better level and offering you contents during this time of, confinement and hard crisis that we're all dealing with. Excuse me. So welcome again to this webinar. This webinar is based on ecosystem-based adaptation. To start, I'm just gonna give a little rundown of the agenda, the different things we'll be discussing today. My colleague Melissa will start this webinar by get us a little bit into and biodiversity to really get into what we're talking about. We're gonna present some different concepts. Unfortunately, we had Jean Villemont-Hilaire, who was supposed to be with us this morning and was gonna present a big chunk of this. Melissa and I, we are stepping in this. So Melissa is gonna present the Fonds Haïtien pour la Biodiversité, some concept that's gonna pass back to me, and we're gonna get well into the EBA concept. And then between I and HDR and FOPO-BEAM, we'll be sharing with you some very concrete examples on EBA activities that we currently have in the field. And then from there, finishing up with opportunities out there with EBA, with the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund. Hello, Jean, can you hear us now?
I can, still having some audio problems. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I can't hear you through, yeah, okay, we'll work on it. We're working on it.
Thank you for being here with us. I'm sure we're gonna have a great conversation this morning. So let's start with, Melissa, can you please start off by just getting us into, talking about biodiversity, a little bit about where this from, and then from there I can plug in with you, and then we'll start off for what's gonna be a great webinar this morning. So Melissa.
Hi everyone, my name is Melissa Sano and I am the Operation Coordinator for Haiti Takes Root. So this morning we're supposed to have Javil Mohilaire to present a large part of this webinar, but he has last minute obligation, so I'm stepping in and I'll talk about what is an ecosystem and talk about resilience and resistance and all of that, all the technical part. So I'm going to share my screen with all of you. Wait a second. Hello?
We can hear you, Melissa. Are you having trouble sharing your screen?
Yeah, are you seeing my screen?
Yeah, but it's just black. Would you like me to put up your slideshow for you?
Yeah, please do, because
Okay, one moment, and I will
okay.
take over the screen sharing. Just a second. Sorry, y'all. Okay. Technical problems. Here we go. Can everybody see this now? Melissa, are you seeing your screen? You're seeing your side of the screen? Okay,
Yes,
great.
I am
Just
seeing.
tell me when you want to advance.
Okay. Yeah, so this morning I'll talk about what an ecosystem is. We all know that an ecosystem is a community of organisms together with their physical environment. And ecosystem can be different in size, it can be marine, it can be aquatic, it can be terrestrial. And broad categories of terrestrial ecosystem are called biomes, and ecosystem can be small, such as the tide pools found near the rocky shores of many oceans, and or very large, such as the Amazon rainforest in South America. In ecosystem, both matter and energy are conserved. Energy flows through the system, usually from light to heat, and matter are recycled. And ecosystems are higher in biodiversity and tend to be more stable when with greater resistance and resilience in face of disturbance when there is a high amount of biodiversity, and that can create an equilibrium when there is disturbance and disruptive events such as natural disasters. Can you move to the next slide, Melinda, please? Yeah. So what can cause disturbance in ecosystems? We have droughts, floods, when we don't have enough, when we don't get enough rain, floods when we get too much rain, wildfires, earthquakes, position in food chain, and degree of specialization, destruction of habitat, excessive pollution, overconsumption, of a species, climate change, hunting, overexploitation, conflicts and war, invasive species, especially climate change right now, can create a lot of disturbances in ecosystem. So when we look at all of these disturbances that can affect an ecosystem, so usually ecologists use two parameters to describe how an ecosystem can respond to disturbance. And these two parameters are resistance and resilience. And resistance is the ability for an ecosystem to remain at equilibrium, to remain in balance in spite of disturbances. And resilience is the ability for that ecosystem to recover after being disturbed. Like, for example, after natural disaster like hurricane. And I can take a concrete example from what happened in Jeremy in Grandas after Hurricane Matthew, how the ecosystem was so disturbed after this hurricane. And in some part of Grandas, it was very easy for the ecosystem to recover. And after a few months, we started seeing natural regeneration, trees were starting to sprout, etc. Next slide. So resistance and resilience are very important when we consider the effect of disturbance caused by human activity. If a disturbance is severe enough, it might change an ecosystem beyond the point of recovery. And that might push the ecosystem into a zone where it's no longer resilient. So a disturbance of this sort could lead to permanent loss of biodiversity, of some species, etc. Next slide. So what can we do when ecosystems are disturbed or lost? There are many things. Can we move to the next slide now? Okay. There are many things that we can do to protect the ecosystem. And government can pose restriction and policies. For example, if a species is being extinct, government can come up with tighter restriction on the consumption of the species or the exploitation of this species. Education, we can educate the general population about the importance, like what we are doing in NIP right now with the mangrove, how it is important to have the mangrove forest for the marine ecosystem. And it's the habitat for many species. We can do protection of species that are more vulnerable than others, protection of habitats like we are doing with the mangrove in NIP, stop deforestation, prevent overhunting and overfishing, prevent species invasion, stop pollution, stop overexploitation of resources, save energy and stop overconsumption, convince others. Those are the things that we can do to help protect the ecosystem. Next. Kenson will talk about adaptation and mitigation in a few minutes. Yes, we can move. Yeah, and another thing that Dr. Hilaire was going to talk about was the Haitian Biodiversity Funds for Haïtien pour la Biodiversité. It's a trust fund created to facilitate the sustainable financing mechanism for the protection of natural resources and ecosystem in Haiti. And the FHB was set up accordingly to eligibility criteria for the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, which is also a regional mechanism for sustainable financing of biodiversity project for the Caribbean. And the FHB has, next slide, has many members now. It includes the Ministry of Environment, the Audubon, Haiti Society, UN Environment, the Nature Conservancy, the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, Swiss Corporation, German Corporation, the United Nations Development Program, the French Development Agency, and us, JPHRO. We are a member of the fund, and we also have a seat on the board of the fund. And The fund is just getting started now, and in the next few years, it will be able to fund projects to protect local biodiversity and such. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much for that. We're going to keep going right away here with Kenson, who's going to talk to us about ecosystem-based adaptation and provide a good overview of that. Are you ready? Let me know if you have any problems sharing your screen. Let's try it.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa. That was great. I think that a nice window to connect with your presentation. I'm going to start this process now of screen sharing. All right. Okay.
Success.
Okay. Yes, just to follow up with what Melissa was saying, this presentation, before getting into some concrete examples and how we apply EBA, we just want to take a few minutes to talk about EBA, ecosystem-based adaptation, that we purpose of setting up this webinar. I think for the examples to come. So now talking about EBA, this concept can cover this whole webinar. So I am gonna specifically touch specific aspect in presenting EBA. So ecosystem-based adaptation is a nature-based solution that is importance right now in the context of climate change. EBA concept was very supported in the strategic plan of the conservation biodiversity policies, strategic plan for 2011 to 2020. So I don't want to say it's fairly new, but it has been developed in 2009, and then from the work on that, 2011 to it got into the EBA links biodiversity in ecosystem. Like Melissa would present the ecosystem conservation, sustainable socioeconomic development as part of the overall strategy for helping people to adapt to shocks and risk associated with climate change. That was one of the points that we are focusing on right now, as far as like all the other disturbance that could happen. We are focusing on climate change and ecosystem-based adaptation. Really, from 2009, become to get into the conversation into how we juggle adaptation. So far, climate change has been mitigation,
Kenson?
and greenhouse gas emission. Hello?
Kenson, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You are breaking up a little. Can I just ask you to speak more slowly?
Okay.
And hopefully it will not persist. I think everybody's just losing a syllable here or there. And if you speak a little more slowly, it'll be easier. Thanks.
Will do. Thank you. Thank you. Talking about climate change, wanted to put, in getting into EBA, I wanted to put these two concepts to mitigation and adaptation. These two concepts themselves could be a separate webinar. There's a discussion that we can have around that. But I'm just basically put this as a definition and how these two kind of match and what we're looking specifically. So mitigations are measures that are those actions that are taken to reduce the curb of greenhouse gas emission. Measures are based on reducing vulnerability to these effects of climate change. So therefore, mitigation attends the cause of climate change, while adaptation addresses its impact. To get into this, we'll all asking the questions then about EBA. What qualifies a project as ecosystem-based adaptation? Again, I am here just going to present some principles, the very basic elements and criteria, approach of EBA. I already talked a little bit about, the EBA elements reflect the 2009 Convention on Biological Diversity. So now these three big elements that really would qualify a project EBA are, they have to, first of all, helps the people to adapt to climate change, by an active use of biodiversity and ecosystem services in the context of an overall adaptation strategy. And all these elements have to go through very specific criteria specifically for each element. Help people adapt to climate change. Within this element, we have two very specific criteria: reduce social and environmental vulnerabilities. EBA must explicitly address current and future climate change variability. It is based on assessment of climate vulnerability, hazards and risks to people, as well as the adaptation benefits derived from ecosystem services. Criteria 2, generate societal benefits in the context of climate change adaptation. EBA reduce vulnerability of people to diversity and ecosystem services, and by producing societal benefits in a fair and equitable manner. All these criteria and elements, right now, I'm just going to the concepts in general, but we'll see that as Fopobim will be presenting, as I will be presenting specifically how we implement and apply these elements and criteria to our specific project. Second element, EBA makes active use of biodiversity and ecosystem services. And that criteria we find within this element is restore, maintain, and improve ecosystem health. EBA restores, maintain, and improve ecosystems, land and seascapes, and it's in line with the ecosystem approach. It is applied at a scale that address the challenge of the integrate the trade-offs results from climate change, meaning it supports the stability, resilience, connectivity, and multiple ecosystems as part of a larger landscape and seascape. And then finally, the last element, which is EBA, is part of an overall adaptation strategy. And this piece is specifically important. And again, through the follow-up presentations, you'll see direct applications on how we apply these to our EBA activities. But the two criteria in this is supporting by policies at multiple levels. And then the fifth criteria is supports equitable governance and enhanced capacities. These are really the elements and principles of EBA. Through the presentations that will be coming here soon, both with Jean Wiener and myself, we'll have more chance to get into the details, into how all these principles, elements, criteria apply. Now, we are talking really on the general concepts. Through these examples that we're gonna give you, we're also gonna talk about adaptation on a general scale, but also how is that possible in the field? Through implementing, especially when we're talking about capacity building, governance, policies and laws. So we'll see that, we'll see how we introduce that, how we're working with the community on that. So this is my little piece of presentation on the approach of ecosystem-based adaptation. Thank you. And I think we can follow up with the next presentation.
Yes, thank you, Kenson. So I would like to ask Jean Wiener if you are able to unmute yourself. Let me know if you need me to put up your slideshow.
I think it may be best
All right, just
to uncomplicate, make it a little less complicated, perhaps.
for sure. One moment, and I will pull that up for everyone. Sorry for the delay.
Or let me try. I can try. Want me to try? There you
Yes.
go.
Okay, we see yours. There we go. Great. Thank you, Jean.
Okay. There. Everybody, can everybody see that?
Yes, it looks great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to this, and thanks for allowing me to present as well. I think everybody gave a pretty good overview of EBA and where we're heading in all of this. Sorry, I was a little late this morning, but of course at 9:58, my computer decided to freeze up, so I had to restart everything. But just give you a quick rundown, and I'm sure later on during our meeting today, we'll be able to go over more more about what's going on with the project in greater detail. So we were, whoops, where am I going? So FOPROBIM was founded in 1992 and was recognized by the government in 1995, and we've headed much more towards a holistic approach in everything that we do. We originally started in terms of trying to undertake just purely scientific research to protect coastal and marine resources. But in the end, after, well, very quickly actually, it was pretty clear that if we did not include pretty much everything related to coastal and marine resources, including, of course, the human element impacting most of the coastal and marine resources, that we weren't going to get very far. So we have a 100% staff dedicated, staff which is 100% dedicated, which means we do nothing else but this. We've been working in Haiti for right now about 28, 29 years, and we do nothing but this. So our mission, just quickly, raising awareness, increasing knowledge, working on projects, trying to ensure that people are working together to manage and protect the resources, the government, CSOs, individuals, fishermen, everybody. You know, we need to get everybody working together on this. Some of the activities that we take, and again, the holistic approach, including education, research into policy, rehabilitation, community development, management plans, association building monitoring, supplemental and alternative income generating activities, the MPA system, and of course the partnerships which are needed to get all of this going. It's actually a lot more difficult than it looks. So at the national level, we work with fishers, farmers, youth groups, everybody, local associations, government ministries, everyone. And on the international level, donors, private foundations, international agencies, etc. You know, again, trying to get everybody working together. So the main threats, which we'll go over quickly as well, overfishing and the use of inappropriate methods and equipment, mangrove cutting, which is what we're primarily going to be concerned with today for fuel, wood, and construction, the exploitation of coral reefs, damage and destruction of environmental zones in some of our MPAs even now are still under threat by various activities. Pollution, of course, marine pollution, and everybody's well aware of the plastic issues, especially plastics in the ocean that are impacting everything these days. And of course, partially for Haiti, erosion and sedimentation issues. So the overfishing, lots of inappropriate methods in particular. In Haiti, we have a lot of people who are not historically, if you will, fishermen or fishers. And They don't know appropriate methods. They don't know how to use them. They don't know proper fishing seasons. So as you can see in the bucket on the left, the result in many places, which is fish caught undersized and just causing all types of issues in destroying the balance of the ecosystems. Again, inappropriate fishing. Again, what we'll do today, well, we'll concentrate more on today the charcoal, the fuel wood, mangrove cutting, the destruction of our coastal forests. This is an area out near between Caracol and Folibiate, where they're going at it with the charcoal production from mangroves. Destruction of the coral reefs. These guys are breaking coral reefs to get polychaete worms out so that they can use it as bait for their fishing. Destruction of sensitive environmental zones. An industrial park on the edge and partly inside a protected area. Destruction of native habitat inside of a protected area for sisal production. And the construction of roads, filling in sensitive ecosystems. Pollution issues, of course, all over all of our beaches, everywhere. Serious, really serious problem. Erosion and sedimentation, flooding. So part of our work in Haiti now, especially as related to mangroves in this case, since mangroves do protect the coastal areas from impacts of storms and hurricanes, flooding and waves, coastal erosion, sedimentation. They also serve as nurseries for an incredible amount of sea life and house and supply habitat for an enormous amount of biodiversity as well, and capture carbon for climate change. So the destruction of our coastal forests in terms of mangroves, and especially in a Caribbean country where we have hurricane activity, a lot of storm activity, a lot of the time causing serious damage. A lot of the damage is caused by the destruction of the mangroves and the coastal ecosystems. So trying to reestablish those systems and trying to, importantly, at the very end, I'll get to that, but trying to find an alternative source of fuel, because that's primarily what they're cut down for, is critically important. And in the process of all of this, getting everybody on board, understanding what the different issues are, providing alternatives, critically providing alternatives to the use of our forests. And in our case right now, the coastal forests, providing alternatives for not so much construction material anymore, since many of the larger mangroves have been cut down already, but primarily for the fuel issue, which Haiti has been experiencing. Other work that we do with coral reefs and some of the rehabilitation of coral systems with coral farming. A bit of the activities on marine environment, ethno-ecological studies and fisheries resources, and everything related to coastal and marine. So the importance of working with local authorities, local community, civil society organizations, even, I mean, everybody, fishermen to mayors to representatives of the ministries to international organizations. I mean, it's critical that we work with everyone at all levels. Everybody has their role to play if we're going to get through this. Missing or excluding, intentionally or not, one sector can have repercussions all the way down the line in terms of the success or failure of the projects. So one of our mangrove nurseries and the coral, development of the alternative and supplemental income generating activities, critically important for EBA. For us, some of what we've been doing is the mangrove linked apiculture. So in this case, adding value to a resource in situ by showing that for example, for the mangroves, you can gain money, make a living without having to, in many cases, permanently destroy the resource. So if you can add value to the mangroves, for example, by the production of honey from mangrove trees, hopefully you can have the apiarists who are doing the honey production defend the mangrove forests and have them act as the guardians of the forest so that others don't come in and destroy their production. We're looking into activities such as mariculture and algae production as well. Mariculture would be shellfish production, sea cucumbers, things along those lines. And the algae is for the carrageenan, which is used in various products such as toothpaste and ice cream and things like that. We'll be looking into activities, teaming up with a group in St. Lucia, hopefully, and have them give us a bit of guidance on how to undertake those types of activities in Haiti. So it's really a question of trying to ensure that, in this case at least, trying to ensure that there's an understanding that you do not have to destroy a resource in order to extract benefit from it, that resources can be used sustainably in an environmentally friendly way, and that, you know, that's how things should be. We shouldn't be extracting, as was said earlier, we shouldn't be extracting more than we can potentially use. Sensitization activities, also critically important. However, sensitization education is nothing if you don't provide an alternative. You can talk until you're blue in the face about not cutting down mangroves, but if that's the only way somebody's making a living for their family and you don't provide them with an alternative, you're not getting anywhere. You're not going to get anywhere. So critically important that you do provide the alternatives. Marine spatial plans, fisheries plans, management plans, also very important. The scientific aspect of this is very important in order to decide and to determine where you need to focus your energy, focus your resources, focus protection and management activities. But again, if you're not providing alternatives and helping the local communities understand what's going on and why, you're not going to get very far. A lot of our work now is up in the 3 Bays, so we're looking, and we've done work throughout Haiti, but we're looking forward to increasing our activities in other locations as well these days. 3 Bays Park, lots of resources, mangroves, lots of ocean area, and lots of important coastal and marine sites. So getting local communities to participate, they need to really feel that they are the ones. They need to know, they need to feel, they need to experience the fact that they are the ones who are going to be the main beneficiaries of activities in the different areas where you are working. There is no way on God's blue earth that you can go into an area and expect that you will use individuals from another area, for example, to come in and plant mangroves. That will not work. The local communities need to feel intrinsically implicated in all of the activities. So wherever we go, the first thing we do is join up with local community groups, get them going, in this case on mangrove nurseries, on mangrove reforestation, on beach cleanups, and getting them involved in every aspect. Developing alternatives again, up in the Northeast in Fort Liberté, we're doing ecotourism now with kayaking, and that's working very well. We're thinking of expanding it. And this is just some of the destruction of mangrove areas up in the Northeast and some of our reforestation activities. I won't go through all of these, but there are still many gaps. One of the main ones is enforcement, the middle one, where a lot of enforcement officials are unprepared or unaware. They just may not be aware of the laws. And this includes everyone from a police officer who may have to make an arrest, to a juge de paix who would have to write it up, to a judge who would have to, of course, judge what's going on, may not be aware of the laws. So all of those aspects also need to be taken care of. And if we're going to protect our mangrove areas, probably the most important one is the last one, in which alternative income generating activities for charcoal producers need to be provided. I know, most of us know, that charcoal production in Haiti goes everywhere from the poorest of people with a machete all the way up to senators, mayors, senators, etc. So it's a tough one to get over. But again, we feel that this is primarily a fuel issue, that if we can get Haiti's fuel issue under control, that we could manage our forests a lot better, and especially the charcoal producers and the charcoal production in the country. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean. That was really helpful and such an important overview for everybody to hear. And I think it leads really nicely into our next piece of the presentation, where Kenson is going to talk with us a bit about the new EBA project that we are undertaking in NEEP, which is very closely related to all of the things that we just heard about. Just to our attendees, remember, if you have any questions, you can always stick them in the Q&A or into the chat box, and we'll make sure to get to those. I see that there are a couple questions for Jean. We're going to get to those at the end of the presentations. Okay, everyone? Thanks. Kenson, all you.
Mm-hmm. Hi, everybody. I guess I'm so like Melinda was saying, I am gonna share my screen again with you guys. Sharing a very specific, excuse me, 2 minutes. So while I'm trying to figure out how to reshare my screen, I am just gonna get the project. So this project is for ecosystemic services for mangrove protection in Bondo area. Excuse me.
I could tell you were really engaged with Jean's presentation because you're totally unprepared to show yours. That's good though.
Yes, you're right. Here I go.
Here we go.
Here we go. Okay. So, can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we don't see your presentation yet. Do you want me to screen share for you?
Yes. Right. Let me try one more time. But go ahead, share it for me, please. I'll just switch. Sorry.
Actually, unable to open it.
Okay, got it. I got it. So you guys, excuse us, guys, just a little technical difficulties. I don't understand how this is coming.
Okay, sorry, I got bumped there, Kenson. Do you want me to share my screen? I see that you're still frozen. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right,
Okay.
let me go ahead here. I think I've got your presentation ready to go for you. Kenson?
Yes. Okay.
All right, this is the best we can do. Sorry, everybody, for the technical difficulties. Kenson, go for it. Just
Okay. Yeah. Sorry for sorry for this. Yeah, I think this is fine. So, just gonna take a few minutes to talk about this project that we have in NIP. This project is funded from well, the money is from the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund from this specific program called the EBA facility, which we'll get to talk about a little bit at the end of this webinar. So the context of this project is for the past couple of years, we've been working in NIP on a other similar project with the Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Agriculture. So as far as that, the work that they're doing and the opportunity that we had to apply for this project, we realize it's just perfect. It's a good synergy as far as what we're bringing in, as far as the adaptation approach to what they have there in the context of their project. So for you guys who don't know much about NIP, and I'll be very specific about the watershed that we're looking at, which is the Payan. The context in getting into this very specific project is because this watershed has some very specific aspect to how the top of the mountain in Payan, with farmers struggling every day, you know, to make a living because of uncontrolled erosion that's happening in the ravine every time it rains, every time we have a storm. And this red, rich soil runs down the ravine and choke the mangrove that is down on the coastal stage of this watershed. The population, again, I feel like I'm gonna repeat a lot of what Jean just said, as far as the reality in these settings. It's easier than to say than actually, you know, make it happen. So we're looking at different, very specific groups that live within the watershed and understand the concept, the context of their living situation. And this is basically how this project came to be. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the project. We're gonna talk in details about the different components of the project. But basically we brought this project. It's a project, but it's a micro, we categorize it as a pilot. When we applied for this, the main focus around this project is mangrove protection. But again, like Jean just said, we cannot talk about mangrove protection without touching a lot of different elements, you know, to make it happen. Livelihood, you know, education piece, governance, all these are very, very specific and important, you know, components to acknowledge when we're getting into managing this project for protection of mangrove, but the whole management of this watershed is concerned. Next slide, please. All right, now, you know, we're talking about Payan Bondo watershed, and probably a lot of you guys do not know the area. So this is just to show you a little bit about the watershed, our area of intervention. The next few slides gonna really describe and show you exactly what we have to work with. So what we're looking at right now is the actual watershed, Bondo Payan, with Bondo being on the coastal side of the watershed and Payan be up in the mountains. I know a lot of you guys know this area. Again, our approach is our intervention should basically cover this area of intervention. Next. So again, to give you a little bit more perspective on where we are, where it is, this is just different brackets to show you, from the Haiti map, we are working in NIP department. You can see these little red dots up there, kind of, where we are in NIP. And then from there, we just blow up, first of all, the watershed and show you exactly the mangrove down there and a little bit of the ravine that we'll be working on and focusing the most at that watershed. Next slide. All right, so this is supposed to be a video. Can you play that, or it's not possible? I don't want to push it.
Yeah, I can, because all I have is the PDF of your presentation. I'm sorry, I don't have the.
Okay, so this was supposed to be a video. Again, I was just showing you guys the location where we are. So this is more practical with our drone view, and with the package that we'll send out after this presentation, you'll have the actual video so you can see it. Right now, what is showing right now is the clear sedimentation that is coming from on top of the watershed. So again, a lot of the issues with that, clearly, as mentioned before, in the context of farmers and people struggling on the mountains with severe deforestation for, charcoal consumptions and, let's just say other means for, people to make income, to the impact that that has in that very specific ravine. And we're talking about this ravine. There are ravines in that specific ravine, and then actually the end product that we're looking here. So with a practice like that that keeps happening, we can only imagine in 5 and 10, where we're gonna be with this. Just to put this in context for you, so the whole zone of this watershed is about 400 hectares. The mangrove itself is about 300 some acres. Right now, we're doing some mapping to really trying to calculate the sedimentation part, because that's actually part of our, M&E structure, as far as like how the work restoration, we'll talk about that in a minute, how we're gonna actually measure that. So that basically show you the sedimentation and the ravine coming down. So right now, let's see about how are we gonna do all of that. This is exactly connecting. There's a lot of synergy. And again, we are sitting on the same panel talking about EBA, talking about this with a lot of the different aspect that Jean just present on approach, on very specific aspect of a EBA project that should be in place if you're not just going to qualify this project as EBA, but to also make sure that the project sticks. So we go by protecting the mangrove. I'm just gonna say it like this, in Bondo, by these 3 specific components. The first one is training and support to improve livelihood of fishers and farmers. A little bit in details and some of the actions we're taking. 2, it's a movement building campaign that includes establishing environmental clubs in schools, facilitating dialogues and collaboration between local stakeholders, very influential actors. That includes local authorities, the CBOs, civil society, everybody that is really involved up and moving in that community. And then thirdly, which is again important, one that Jean left us at that last, his presentation, is we put improve, that is improve, train, capacity building. That itself, it has its challenge, we know, but to better understanding what they have on hand, what kind of tools, how they can do it, work together, not only on a local level, but also to basically manage their local resources. Yes, thank you. All right, so we'll look in the first component. I'm just gonna give some examples on how we're gonna tackle, all these different, activities. Next slide, please. So through this, we are looking to working directly with fishers. So we have different outcomes that we look through in this specific components. You look at, we'll see all of them briefly, not getting into the details. I just give you kind of the skeleton, of the fun work. So the first one will be building capacity and working directly with fishers. For a lot of you guys who are in that world, we all know that challenge. I know I already had that conversation with Jean. Working, within the fishing sector in Haiti has a challenge. Needless to say, these are some of the activities that are based around that. So who we have to work with, because that's actually a very important piece. Everybody has association, so we have to make sure of that. And since what we have to work, everybody participates, we are gonna create an umbrella cooperative that is, whether it's individual fishers, association, can be part of that, and will also benefit from, a lot of the activities, outcomes. That definitely, the idea would be generating money, or again, to put the emphasis on how important that is, to, help protect the mangrove in that sense.
Kenson?
At the same, yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to make a note that it is now 11:03. So thank you, everybody. We had technical difficulties, so we are going to keep going a little over an hour here. But Kenson, I want to encourage you to go through your presentation more quickly so we can get to some of the questions we already have and give people a chance to ask anything they might want to know. If you could just do a quick go through your presentation, please.
Yes, we'll do. Thank you for this. I already present, a lot of the course. I'm just gonna, go through this real quick. And again, like I said, Jean covers a lot of the principles in his presentation. I don't want to stretch just too much. But yeah, so, within this, we're also gonna work with them to determine some kind of co-financing mechanism. One of the things that usually encourage participation and durability is to actually make sure that they also invest their time and resources into some of the activities. And then, obviously, in different exchange, with other organization, other projects, and, in the same aspects. Next slide. Again, farmers, fishers, farmers, kind of, again, concentrating on bringing in extra income. And we'll be introducing a new value chain, well, not new value chain, but actual watershed, which is the moringa. And we're very specific about it because we also have a on the project that would support the whole development of the chain from nursery to, to planting them, and then to actually putting on the market, buy the leaves and seeds and, details from them. We're not getting into the details of that. Again, to encourage the people to be part of that, it will be a payment for ecosystem services. We'll agree on, how we work with the people on tree survival to make sure that not only they're encouraged, but, that we're creating a sustainable system around them with extra income altogether. Next. Again, the governance piece, you can go to the activities. Next slide. As he did accentuate on is the fact these key stakeholders do not even have, the guides or curriculum any information or knowledge on existing laws and policies. So we're going to make sure we work with the structure that exists and connect, different communalities around mangrove, because that mangrove actually falls on 3 different communes, and how we can work with them to make sure that this happens. So through different workshops, working, also gonna be presenting to a larger group of the population, just to make sure that we are actively working and understanding, the context that we are trying to implement. Next. Yes, again, through this group, we'll be putting together is very important for everybody to understand their role, where they stand, obligations towards this happening. So conferences, working sessions, capacity building, support will be provided from us. Next slide. Okay, this is a lot. Again, we talk about the knowledge piece, educational piece, the movement building piece. So working in that context, we want to make sure also that young people are becoming leaders, that talking about the mangrove, it's their area, it's so there should be what's happening and be part of, so to say, project. So different research project in the mangrove with the schools. Again, this is talking the crisis that we're dealing with right now, which may some stuff at risk when it comes to school year and all that. We're not getting to this, but also use or and to give them some hands-on practice and fun while they're all doing it. Next one. Local stakeholders, again, working with this protection plan, have all know their area the best. They know everything about it, their history, how it works in the past, how it's working now. And there are, the key stakeholders, the pastors, the voodoo priests, the school teachers, the mashun. So we make sure through the government understand and move on into a common goal within, the project objectives. Next one. I think we almost done. Okay, and this is the last activities. One of the things that is connected is also our movement develop like different campaigning tools, audio tools, visual tools, artists. It's all these elements get because we make it fun. You put it different activities for jumping in. And then next slide. Present for me. So our partners for this project is in one important is a local community. We also have some kind of financing that they're contributing, but like Jean's saying, we're also using a lot of their expertise and using them working with project. This project is based a lot on capacity. Obviously, that's gonna provide a lot of that is the supporting the marine chain, the chain of that from A to Z. Productive Landscape, which is a project of Ministry of Environment and Agriculture, which they are working also in the same watershed. So a lot of the work we'll be doing, they're working mostly on restoring mangrove, and we'll be doing a lot of sensitization work around what they're doing and all that. Thank you, everybody. This is the presentation for our project, Mangrove Project in NEEP.
Thank you, Kenson. And thank you everybody for your patience with our technical difficulties. Sorry, we had to show a PDF. We are at 11:11 and want to take an opportunity to look at the questions that people have already shared in the Q&A and also in our chat box. And then really quickly before we sign off, we'll get just maybe from Kenson and Melissa and Jean, if you as well, maybe one or two key pointers for anyone who might be applying to the EBA facility. So while we're doing the Q&A, be thinking about that for closing remarks. And so we have in our questions, just taking a look at those now. We have two questions here for Jean. One question is, where are the coral farms located? And as for the fishermen not knowing, is it that they aren't equipped with the proper equipment to do things properly?
Okay, well, thanks for the questions. We've been having everyone, I think, well, not everyone, but there have been several attempts to start coral farms in Haiti, and we've had three. We had a tiny pilot project once in Tuforba in north of Port-au-Prince, which we were not able to supervise after a while, which fell by the wayside. And we've tried two up in the Three Bays National Park up in the Northeast. One was heavily damaged and pretty much destroyed by local fishermen accidentally with their nets. Even though the area was marked off and everybody knew that it was there, some guys from outside the area, I believe they were from Balimbe, which is way out of the protected area, did not know and went through the area. And another set was destroyed by one of the storms, I don't remember, a few years ago. The guys up at Cormier, the Cormier Beach Hotel, apparently are still working on theirs out at Ila Amiga or Ilara, depending on what you want to call it. But these activities have stuttered and sputtered in Haiti, as they do all over the world. So it's kind of hard to get them going at different levels. For the fishermen, yes, it is a question that they don't have the right gear. Sorry about the ringing, that's something else. But the fishermen also do not have the right gear. In part, they make their own. So it's partially also their ability to target what they want to target. There are standards in the fisheries codes and fishing seasons and all of that. But the fishermen, the mesh size of their nets are getting smaller and smaller, and they're the ones who are making their own nets. So they're catching smaller and smaller fish. And one of the impacts of that is, to a certain extent, you're wiping out all the juveniles, and you're not actually able to even catch a lot of the bigger fish, because when the mesh size gets too small, the bigger fish actually bounce off the nets. They don't get caught in the nets. So you're creating a serious imbalance in the ecosystem. And it's difficult. You know, some people say, you know, why don't we just give them boats so they can go further, and gas so they can go further, and things like that. And it makes a whole bunch of problems, because who benefits from the boats, who benefits from the gas, who pays for the gas, who pays for repairs, and all of that. So we can discuss it offline if you want. I know we're in a bit of a rush, so I'll leave it at that.
Henrika, that were in our Q&A box. I'm just going to read them both, and then I think probably Kenson, you might be able to answer the first, and I don't know who might want to speak to the second. First, what did other countries do when they transitioned from wood charcoal to alternatives? The second question is, are there organizations that focus on mountain villages and the lack of water sources there? Because that's what they're dealing with right now with their organization. And then I just got another question here, which is, has there been any progress on establishing seasons and size limits for fishing in Haiti? So I'm going to send that over. First, Kenson, I don't know if you want to speak to the question about wood charcoal alternatives. And
Yes.
Remember to stay brief, everyone, so we can answer all the questions.
Yes, we'll do. And to be honest, I don't think we have a clear answer to that, but I'll just give you, some, and I think Jean mentioned that, you know, before the charcoal, it's a complexity of the charcoal industry in Haiti too. So the charcoal industry in Haiti annually brings almost $400 million. When we're looking at, you know, the different stages, you know, from, you know, cutting the trees to production to transportation to, you know, usually bringing it into a bigger city like Port-au-Prince or Cap-Haïtien. So it's not necessarily about a cultural switch or a quick switch. It also has to do a lot of, you know, cultural understanding and adaptation. Because again, when you have an industry that has significant money, funding, support like that behind it, you know, it's not easy to switch that system to a lot of other alternatives that we don't even have as a base here, like propane, you know, and all of that. So there is some kind of cultural shift that we need to also do in understanding that. Yes, there are solutions. There are a lot of different ways. There are people are, you know, in this industry and are recycling wood. So they're actually making charcoal, planting in rotation. It could be sustainable, but also destructive if the structure is not behind it. So there's a lot of different organizations. Maybe that could be, you know, a larger question that are trying to do some actual assessment in Haiti right now on alternative fuels, alternative, you know, ways of cooking to basically become of, you know, understanding the strategy on how that shift happens or can happen.
Okay, the second question was about any organizations that might be focusing on mountain villages and lack of water sources. All right, I'm not sure we have an answer to that one right off the top of our heads, but I will put it into the follow-up and we will see if we can answer that maybe in a follow-up email. And then Jean, I think this question is for you. Has there been any progress on establishing seasons and size limits for fishing in Haiti?
Well, we do have the fishing code from 1978, which was for the time fairly well written, but is way out of date now. Various institutions, including, I believe, the Ministry of Agriculture, is looking at a way to potentially update the fishing code, and that would include new fishing seasons and new fishing regulations. But I've heard about that stuttering and sputtering for several years. But actually, yesterday we were just contacted by them, and there may be a potential to get that going again. But again, rules and regulations is one thing, enforcement is a completely other thing.
Indeed, indeed. Okay, so we're going to wrap up, but before we do, I just want to ask each of our panelists, Jean, Melissa, and Kenzen, if you were going to give one piece of advice or insight on the EBA facility. So, and I don't know if we spoke specifically about this, but the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund is accepting applications to the ecosystem-based adaptation facility at this time. So if you could just give one or two top insights for anyone who's looking to apply, I'll make sure that in our follow-up notes, we share the links to that website. Jean, can you go first?
Sure. As we discussed, I think all of us touched on it to a certain extent at various times during the meeting today, is just to make sure that local communities, that CSOs are intrinsically involved in the projects from the very beginning, from inception all the way through execution, primarily because you'll have a great deal of difficulty implementing anything in the communities if they are not involved, and you're probably just looking for a complete failure if you do not involve them.
Great, thank you for that. Melissa, do you have any insight or piece of advice you'd like to share?
I just want to add to what Jean just said. I think it would be good to partner with
Melissa?
local organization. So
Understand, would you
Lisa, you're breaking up. You are breaking up. So,
yes. Can you hear me?
no, you are breaking up.
Hello?
Let me just fill in maybe just to kind of
Hello?
it's up. Yeah, you are breaking up.
Hello?
It's a little better now.
Ah, okay. My internet connection is very strong.
Melissa, you need to just type your.
Hello?
We can't hear you. If you could just type into the chat, and we'll just let Kenson go ahead, and you can share your information with folks that way, please. Kenson?
Yes. For me is I am first of all going to second what Jean just said. It's a the people-centered, like people approach. So that is very important. The other side of this, we talk about where we make governance and policies and laws also a center of what you're doing. So it's not just implementing that, but work local authorities, local structures, anywhere you can create entry points between local communities and local authorities. You know, on a local level, if you can get it to the regional level, it's even better. So that is a very important piece that EBA looks into because they're looking at sustainability around it. So making sure that their governance is trained, understanding their laws, and you know, again, we all understand the challenge of that. That is a challenge, but it's a good one to tackle applying for EBA project. So just we talking about this very specific opportunity, and I'm just gonna say this before Melinda, you know, just jump in. If you go on the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund right now, it's on the website, it's live. You will see the opportunity for the second call of proposal for the EBA facility, you know, fund project program. So again, this was one of the purpose of also having this webinar to also present this opportunity. We were part of the first call. First call. So we are placed also to keep having chats with you guys. If you're interested in, you know, give us. Melinda.
Yes, thank you, Kenson. Thank you, Jean and Melissa. Thank you, everybody. I want to just add one thing about the EBA. I did collaborate in writing the project in NEEP, and one thing that is incredibly important is to remember to be ridge to reef. So Kenson presented that watershed of NEEP, and the project that did get funded by EPA is looking at how the impacts at the mountain level will be important and have that counter effect at the coastal level. So remember, as you're thinking about your projects, people-centered, yes, local engagement, and ridge to reef, how are we really going to think about an entire watershed? So thanks again to everybody who joined us. We will be doing this webinar again this afternoon at 2 p.m. in French and Creole. And at that time, we will be joined by Jean-Hilaire Villemont to talk more about the Haitian Biodiversity Fund. So I hope you can join us again if you would like to hear that piece. And we will follow up with everybody via email. Last thing is save the date. The next 2 Wednesdays, we'll be doing webinars. Next week, we'll be talking about food security, or rather insecurity, because of the current drought. And the week after that will be the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. We're very excited about that. So hope to see you at both of those events as well. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye, thank you.